All right, so as we work on our notes today, we're going to try to build something that looks something like this. So you want to leave room and follow along. So we start with this idea, how does an animal get extra big muscles or not? So protein and exercise affect muscle size, and the question is how. And we know that basically doing exercise builds muscle, and eating protein builds more muscle than eating carbs. So we learned that from the different readings we've done. And so what we're going to try to do now is we're going to try to sort of draw a picture of, or draw a model of what we know about muscle growth that would help us include these things, and put this on a piece of paper to sort of show us how we could explain the difference. So remember, we have what's called a typical animal. So we have the typical animal, that's the one without a lot of muscles. And then we saw that giant, extra big muscled animal. And the question is, how do we represent that, and how come this one's different than this one? So we can draw a regular muscled animal over here, and I'm just going to draw a stick figure. And we can draw that same stick figure over here. But we know that the stick figure, the one that's got extra muscles, has these sort of extra circles or ovals around it to represent those big muscles that this one has, okay? And in fact, they're all over the place. And what we know is that if we zoom in over here and draw ourselves like a little microscope view of the muscles that these things have, we'd know that in this one we have maybe 7 small muscle cells, and that's what a normal muscle cell might look like. Whereas over here, the muscle cells are bigger and they're more packed together. They have more area. They look more like this. So there's actually more of them and they're more packed together. And if we remember, they all have a lot of these muscle fibers in them, and they have more fibers than these ones maybe do over here. So that's the cellular level. The question is, how do we get that? And there's sort of 2 factors we saw. There's doing exercise and there's dieting, or not dieting, but eating a special diet. So we're going to start with exercise. And we remember that exercise, the way it works is it causes little tiny micro tears in the muscle fiber. So when you actually exercise, you actually break down your muscle fiber and you make these little tears in it. Okay? And then what your body does is it repairs those tears and repairs them to causes tears in muscle fibers and repairs basically make the fibers longer and thicker. Fibers. So these are all like tiny little thin, hair-like, if not smaller than that, tiny little fibers. But when we rip them and tear them, when we exercise, we repair them and make them longer and thicker little fibers, and that's what makes the cells bigger. So that's the one thing. And then we have the diet piece. So then we have this idea that food molecules that we eat, right, these are rearranged. That is, they get broken down and rearranged to build and maintain or repair muscle cells. So since basically muscles are made of protein, it's particularly useful to have protein as the food molecule that you eat. If you eat a lot of protein, then you're going to have the materials you need to fix the cells that get broken down by exercise. And so when we think about this, the big effect, the big thing that changes muscle growth is exercise. So if you do a lot of exercise, you're going to get these kinds of larger muscles. Whereas if you just do normal exercise or regular exercise, you don't get very much muscle growth. So this is lots of exercise. Okay, lots of exercise makes large muscles, little bit of exercise makes normal muscles. And then in both cases, you do need to eat the right thing, but the effect of this is smaller, right? You in other words, if you think about it, just by eating protein, you're not going to get big muscles. You have to exercise, break down those fibers, and then repair them with the protein that you eat. That's going to make big muscles. So food has a small effect, exercise has a large effect on muscle growth. And that's the story on this little notes page.